Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my very own shirt, which is sponsoring this episode. It is available on Redbubble. It is making fun of Taco Bell, Gundam, Amuro Ray, Fallout, and the most interesting man in the world. So go pick up my shirt if you're a huge Gundam fan like I am. But I'm not going to bore you with the rest of my sponsors here because I have with me the voice of Lynn Minmay and Nunnally Lamperouge, Rebecca Forstadt. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be on your show.
Yeah, me too, because obviously Robotech was a little bit before my time, but I went backwards and forwards, and I'm a huge Code Geass fan. And
Uh-huh.
obviously you played both those roles, and I kind of just tipped off my entire hat a little bit. But before we dive into some of your roles, I'm very curious how you got into voice acting because you've been in the game for a very long time.
Very, very long. Since 1981 officially, I guess. I was studying acting. I studied acting in high school and college, and then I decided to come to LA to, pursue a career as an actress. And after kind of doing a few other things, I sort of got waylaid and was working on a set for a while doing wardrobe. I decided, this is what I wanted to do. And I saw in the trade paper, which was called the Hollywood Drama Log at the time, that they were looking for kid voices. And I had this perfect kid voice that sounded really natural. And so I answered the call, and it turned out to be uh, a studio called Intersound, which ended up they were recording a bunch of anime stuff. We really didn't know what it was at the time because the only anime we'd seen was like Kimba the White Lion and Speed Racer, but that was like in the 60s. So this was kind of in the very early 80s, and they were doing all these shows that were kind of going off in the wind and everything. And I just started working there, and I was sort of a natural at it because it kind of takes a certain technique to be able to dub something that's already been done in Japanese. And somehow I just kind of fell into it. I don't know if it was like a slightly musical background, not a really major musical background, but I had done things like that. And after that, I started working, and then they started doing Robotech there, which, like all these other projects that we were doing, they just kind of went somewhere. We had no idea where it went. And Robotech just kind of took off, and it, went on TV, and all of a sudden became really, really popular. And then they started to send us on conventions. So we were like one of the first voice actors to go on these conventions. It was kind of funny because the first one that I did, it was a San Diego Comic-Con, and it was much smaller than it is now. Now it's huge, but it was still pretty big. I mean, there was thousands of people there, and they dressed me up as Minmay, and nobody else was dressed up. And now it's the opposite. So it's pretty funny. But once I
Oh,
no,
please continue.
well, once I started working there, I was just started working, all the time because there was a small group of voice actors at the time, probably about 30. So anytime there was any kind of anime project that came into town, we all worked on it. Now it's a whole different story because now there's thousands of people, a lot of anime fans that want to be voice actors. So it's a lot different than it used to be.
So to even talk about this, because obviously I'm familiar with the Wild West sort of in 1995 and
Uh-huh.
before obviously places like Funimation and even Viz started popping up. And the way I call it is that it was the Wild West. And I would imagine the 80s were even wilder than that time period. And so what was like the scene like in dubbing and even finding dubs and even auditioning? Because obviously I think this might have even been before the three beep system, I think.
Yeah. Some of it was, but when I started doing Robotech, they didn't use beeps. We had to watch the time code, which was really crazy. Like we'd see this time code going by really fast and jump in, and then they didn't have Pro Tools and things like that. They had, tapes that they'd have to keep changing, these big 3/4 inch tapes. And so you had to really hit it spot on. So we got really good at it. So we could hit it right on the nose, and we had writers that could write for it. Now it's different because they can stretch things, so you don't have to be as perfect. And it also made a difference in the acting because, having to hit it spot on, it's really difficult to not sound kind of stiff. But we did the best we could, and I think we did a pretty good job.
And then even obviously jumping into Robotech because that's how I know your voice. And
Mhm.
obviously, I sort of fell into Robotech. I found it probably 10 years ago. And I'm
Oh,
like, man,
wow.
this is an awesome show. It's an awesome show. It's exciting. And so, how did that even come up that you were the voice of Lynn Minmay? Because I don't think anybody knew what Robotech was. I didn't think anybody knew what it would become.
We
Also,
didn't.
Macross as well. And the fact that we're talking about it, what is it, 30, 35 years later, I think, at this point. So,
More, no, more than that. 40, 40 something, I think. Almost. I don't know, somewhere around there. I think it was officially like 1983 or 4, something like that. But well, it came into the studio. We were all working in this one studio that was on Sunset Strip called Inner Sound. And a guy came in there, after I'd probably been working there a year and a half, maybe longer. I don't know, just doing little things, little crazy little animes. And this guy came in, Carl Masek, and he had a comic book store and all this stuff. And he decided he wanted to produce this show. And he had put together the 3 stories from these 3 different animes. And, we had to write, because it was for an American audience and it was going on television, they had to write it for an American audience. So at the time, there weren't all these people that were, real traditionalists, or they wanted it to be, follow the Japanese translation and all that. It just didn't work like that. So they would write dialogue in all the dead spots and, try to make it really entertaining and everything. And but how I got the part itself was, I was kind of this group. There was the small group of actors, and they asked me to just sing a song in the studio, like, impromptu. So I didn't practice anything. And all I did was sing It's My Party, like really badly because I couldn't remember any of the words to it. And I got the part, which was pretty amazing. Um, and then it just took off, and it was like it's never stopped. I still have a bunch of fans, like even all over the world. I get these people on Facebook that, they pop up and they're from Chile or Argentina, or a lot of them in South America for some reason, and Australia and England, and all over the place. So
and even to talk about that, because obviously Lin Minmay, in a lot of ways, is very much a pop cultural symbol at this point. Robotech was a gateway in a lot of ways as well for people in the anime world. And so, what is this like for you, knowing that, hey, it's still relevant? Because not every show has remained relevant in the anime world. A lot of shows are good around for maybe 5 years and then people sort of forget about it,
yeah.
but this one is one of the ones that has remained very relevant. And I also think, obviously Titan Comics has redid the Robotech comics, and that has helped to some degree as well. But I'm speaking to a bunch of my friends, and I go, yeah, I remember Robotech. And so, what is that like that we're still talking about it today?
Well, it's always surprising, how popular it still is. And I really truly believe that it brought a lot of anime into the United States because, like I said, it was just those shows in the 60s, those couple of shows that, everything else was Huckleberry Hound and the Flintstones and, whatever else. But it it really started bringing stuff in. And so after we did Robotech, there was a slew of stuff that we did, not only with Carl, because he formed this production company called Streamline Pictures. So I did a lot of shows with that, and then Saban, and did a ton of stuff, and and it was really big. And we had our ups and downs where you know voice acting would go from, like, Los Angeles was always the biggest market, but for a little while they went to Canada, and then they went to Texas, and I don't know, Texas became really big, but they weren't paying voice actors very much. Unfortunately, they still aren't. And now
Well, I
it's
know
just,
exactly how much they make in Texas. I know exactly how much they make.
yeah, it's kind of frustrating because we really worked hard to try to get a union contract, and so we could make decent money and residuals, hopefully, or whatever. And yeah, now it's just kind of turned around again because everybody's they're doing voiceovers on Fiverr, for $5. So it's and then everybody has to have a home studio, which is kind of hard too. I've got one in my closet, but it's so, I mean, I can't even fit my clothes in my closet because I just share a house with another friend, and and then it gets really hot and you feel like you're going to pass out, and just it's difficult.
I
I'm
used
on my
to
desk right now because I don't want to be inside the dark room if I don't have to.
I used to record with like create a tent with my bed blanket to block out sound, so I know exactly how it looks. And that was when I was only doing audio on this show a while back. And
Yeah.
I'm beyond that. I've given up. And I'm lazy and I've given up. But even going further into Saban, because one of the things that I think you've also worked on, and I know a bunch of people from Robotech have also worked on a bunch of Saban projects, is you did a bunch of stuff with the Power Rangers.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think you were the computer voice. I think you were like the fighting Flate, and then I think you were a few others as well. And so, what was that like? Because that's like another big thing where there's just so many people who have worked on Power Rangers who have then worked on things like obviously Robotech, obviously Naruto, and it's almost been like a transition point for so many people. And so, what was that like? Really getting to work on those show like the Power Rangers, which is just another iconic position.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and I actually ended up working on that for 10 years. So I started off when they first started, and then just kept going until they finally moved to New Zealand, I guess. But I always did most of the background stuff. And so what was really fun about that was we would all come in as a group. So we did the background voices, and it was just crazy and fun, and we had a blast doing it. We just, it was like a party every day. And the guy that directed it was so much fun. And unfortunately, he just passed away, which is really sad. But uh, that was just amazing. And I even got to do, some monsters, which isn't something that I would normally get cast in. And then some of my friends who worked, voiceovers ended up being on camera for some stuff, which was kind of exciting. I didn't, but they got to. And yeah, that was amazing. And my son, I have two kids. They're both in their 30s now. But when I was working on that, they were little kids, and I was able to tell my son there was going to be a White Ranger before anybody else knew it in preschool.
Because it's Power Rangers and everybody knows the Power Rangers too. It's one of those things where like a lot of people who are real anime fans know Robotech, people know the Power Rangers, and it's just one of those worlds that like is so interesting. And I think people forgot that like Power Rangers is where so many people have started their
Yeah.
career.
Yeah, a lot of the voice actors too that came in after me, they started with Saban and Power Rangers and some of the other shows. We were doing a lot of anime shows there too.
Yeah, and one of them is a very, very fun one that I've only
Yeah.
seen parts of, and that is, I guess, Tenchi Muyo, and
Oh,
then it's like Magical Girl, Pretty Sammy, and then it's the entire arc of that, and like there's legitimately like 20 different versions of it, like at this point. And so, what was this one? Because I think you're Mihoshi in this,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
she's a fun character.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, that one wasn't Saban, it was, I think, Pioneer or something like that. And that one, I took over the part from another actress because I think they had a contract dispute. So I ended up doing Mihoshi for that. And then not too long ago, I did another GTO, I guess was Tenchi Muyo GTO, I think it was. And that was a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago. But actually I had to tell them, I got called to do that, and the director was going, he was going to cast me in something, and I said, I'm Mihoshi. I had to tell him I was Mihoshi. So I ended up playing that again. Sometimes they forget, like.
So what is that like? Because I know that Tenchi Muyo has been around for like 20 years, and I think that I'm not exactly sure when you got the role, but I know it was early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so what is that like, that you obviously took over the role from somebody, but then there's also been a lot of changes to Mahoshi's character, where she used to be a more diligent cop, and then she became more ditzy, and she became sort of more comic relief, but then certain, I guess, OVAs and certain series have different traits of her, but there's always that common thread. And so what is that like, that first A, taking it over, and then B, it evolving, but also you getting your moments with her? Because 20 years of voicing a character, you really know the character, and you also got to sort of evolve the character in certain ways.
Well, I didn't do it for 20 years. I did it 20 years ago, but
over 20 years, we could say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, what happens when we go in and do voices for stuff like that is we go into the studio usually by ourselves, and we don't get the script ahead of time, so we really don't know what's happening. We have to depend on the director to tell us what we're doing. And I guess it evolved because my voice was a little bit different than the other person, Ellen. Her name was Ellen Gerstal, I think. And it might have just been that they decided to kind of go with what kind of voice I have, which tends to be a ditzy kind of voice. I don't know if they wrote their scripts kind of based on that. I don't really know what happened. I didn't write the scripts for that. I did write scripts for about 10 years, and on different shows like Digimon, actually. I did 3 years on that. But
with Jeff Nimoy.
Yeah, and Bob Buchholz. But yeah, I didn't. Most of the time, I don't know what's happening in a script at all. We never get a script ahead of time. We'll come in by ourselves, and if we're really lucky, there's somebody who will have recorded before us, so we can listen to them. But now it's like we listen to the Japanese now too, to get the idea of kind of their pacing and everything, so we can stay closer to that. But before, it wasn't like that.
So obviously there's two things that are actually super interesting. So obviously, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, now dubs come out massively quicker. Where back in the day, you were lucky that if a show had 25 episodes, and correct me if I'm wrong, that would be 5 years out to some degree, is what I've heard and had an idea and understand, where it was almost done like 3 episodes at a time, and you didn't know when it was going to finish, if it was ever going to finish, I think, in a lot of ways.
What I remember is working on it pretty consistently to get through all the episodes, and then whatever they did after that, I don't know. We didn't really go like a long periods of time in between, because they had to keep the actors, and you never know what's going to happen to somebody's voice, or somebody might go out of town. Or, I mean, I've had episodes where, like Melissa Fawn, who has a kind of a similar voice to me, she was doing Broadway shows, and so they would bring me into, like, can you do Melissa's voice here? just come in to do like a pickup or something like that. So those kinds of things happen.
And then the other thing that you mentioned that is interesting is obviously doing scripts, because things have to be adapted. And also, and there are words in Japanese that don't exist in English, and there's things in English that don't exist in Japanese, and there's also jokes that might be in Japanese that an American audience won't get.
Right.
And so it's the idea that we might have a saying in America, and I can't think of something off the top of my head, that might not make sense in Japan, or vice versa. And so what was that like? Because that's something that I think a lot of people forget, is that sometimes things need to be adapted. And I don't want to say Americanized, but to some degree they were Americanized,
Yeah.
especially, and it's only recently that there's been a sort of shift where shows have been, I guess, steered a little bit more pure, I feel.
Oh yeah, definitely had to do that. But when we first started out, like I said, we were writing dialogue in where there wasn't any dialogue, just because they felt like they had to keep the pace up. Sort of like a typical cartoon, like any of the Warner Brothers cartoons. But yeah, then it changed a lot. But yeah, writing the scripts was funny. Like on Digimon, that was a good example. That one was made for American television, and you had to go through the American broadcast standards to put it on television. So like if it's on cable, they could pretty much do anything. But when it's on like a major network, like now that everything's streaming, so you can pretty much do anything now. But before it was, there were the 3 stations, and then there was like, I don't know, Sci-Fi Station or Channel 11, or I don't know which one it was, but but anyway, you had to stick with those things. So I had this one episode of Digimon, and the entire episode took place in, like, part of it took place in a cave where there were all these little things that looked very much like little turds. and I had to make it sound like it wasn't a turd, but it was definitely a little turd, and I guess I ended up calling them Digi Drops or something. I don't know what it was, something like that. But we had to write dialogue around that because you couldn't put that on television. And then there was a lot of nudity and stuff that they had to take out, and just a lot of stuff like that. So that was the same thing with Robotech. They had to do a lot of that. But now you can pretty much do anything. And as far as as you asked me about the translation, yeah, I mean there was a lot of stuff. Like we would get an English translation that somebody did. I don't know who did it, but somebody did it, and it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. And so you had to kind of like figure out where they were going with that. It was, unless you spoke Japanese, you really kind of had to depend on the translator, and then you had to make it entertaining too and make sense, or be funny, or whatever it is it's supposed to be. So it was like I would tear my hair out. I did it for 10 years, and I don't know how people did it. Of course, when I did it, was a lot different technologically, because I had a VHS player with a big jog wheel, and I had to go back and forth. And the first thing I had to do was I had to catch all the time code, and I had to like type out all the time codes of each of these little things. And everything that was done in these little short things. You didn't just do like a big long sequence. You broke it up into how somebody would speak. And so it was excruciating sometimes. And it was sort of like solving a Mensa problem, because you had to fit the lips. And some of it was Pro Tools too, but you had to fit the lips and make it entertaining and make it make sense. And it was really like, it would drive me crazy. I don't know how people do it. Like some people are still doing it even from the time that I started doing it. And I'm like, I don't want to be sitting in a little room doing that all day. I'm sorry. I want to be out in the sun.
Because this is why I think this is so interesting, is that I think people with voice acting, and even fans who are looking at this and seeing this, and people who say, hey, I want to voice act, I don't think they see and they understand that you're in the booth alone, that you may or may not get the script ahead of time, you may or may not get a character profile, you might go on 10 editions and you might get all of them, or you might not get none of them. You might be number 2 but not number 1, which means you didn't get the job. And I think people understand all of that. I don't think people understand necessarily what a sound engineer does. I don't think people understand what a voice director does. And I don't think people understand that also there's somebody who has to write the translation and sort of script out, and I don't want to, maybe script out's not the right word, but box out, okay, this is when this person is speaking. Even if you do have Pro Tools, you still need some format so that the voice director understands where the show is going. Because if you're off, you can't just start 20 seconds later. And also, you still have to match the lips a little bit, and you have to be close enough to make it work. So that's why I think this is so interesting, because there's a whole pre-production side of this that I think nobody talks about. And it's
Yeah,
a
and
big,
it's changed a lot too. I mean, I don't even know what's going on anymore. I mean, I haven't done anything since before the pandemic as far as anime, because now everybody's in their studio and you have to have the perfect place to do it in. And then you have to be an engineer, which we never had to do. So I don't know what happened to all these engineers we used to work with, because they were great. We would just come in, we'd slide in, they'd fix our mic, they'd do everything that had to be done, and all we did was just do the voice. But now you've got to be like this techno geek to do everything. And I'm actually very tech savvy, in a lot of ways. I have these. I'm also a blogger, and I do social media stuff, and I've set up my own blog since like 2008 and do all the work on it and everything. I taught myself how to do that, but just like it's like one thing after another. And then just when you get it, the technology will change, and they'll have something new that comes in, and you got to get this set up, but you've got to have all this perfect environment, which isn't always possible when you're in a house with somebody else, or you've got gardeners in the backyard, or dogs barking, or sirens, whatever. There's always something. And then the air conditioner, like you can't run the air conditioner, and if it's 120 degrees, you could pass out. So it's like
this is why I've given up, and people have given me, shit for it, for lack of a better word. I'm like, you gotta understand that nothing's perfect here, and it's a matter of figuring it out. And setting up a rig is difficult, and so I'm not worrying too much about it. But it's not my job, right now. And then if I was to record voices and I'm in the middle of teaching a class and recording that, and look, if my air conditioner goes off, you know what? The information is good, and everybody's gonna have to deal with it accordingly. Is how I view it.
And you're a young guy, and I'm not.
I mean, I understand the technology, but I also understand that at the end of the day, and what I'm doing is that it's the content that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And but again, if I was recording voices, I would definitely not be happy, and it'd be a pain. You need like a soundproof booth in a lot of ways, and you need to like build out a box, and you need the right mics, and it just becomes a headache.
Yeah, and I guess what happens too is like sometimes you'll work on a production and they'll want to switch your mic. So they'll like send you a mic, and then you have to set it up. And, I guess now, hopefully, I think they're coming back into the studio more. But, the pandemic keeps going on. So I'm not really sure. It doesn't seem to ever end.
It's very interesting. And obviously, I haven't spoken to voice actors in a while, probably about 2 months. So I'm a little bit out of the loop as well with what's going on. I don't know fully what's going on with Texas. And obviously, there's been something massive. Obviously, Sony bought Funimation, and they bought Crunchyroll for legitimately like $1.3 billion in the last like 2 or 3 years. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the anime world. AMC Networks bought HD Dive, I think. And so a lot of stuff's going on that is even beyond just the technicals. But again, I am somewhat out of the loop on all of that. But it's becoming a fascinating industry in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. And it's become much busier, and I'm not really sure where all this stuff's coming from, but there's just a ton of voice actors anymore. So
it's because what happened is that all the kids who got shoved in a locker for watching all this anime stuff, now it's cool to watch it because all these like football players, NBA players, and baseball players are like, I love Naruto, I love Dragon Ball Z, I love Robotech, I love Pokemon. And then all the kids who got shoved in a locker kept all their fun toys from me. Now they're worth money, and now everybody's like, oh man, I wish I had that stuff back. And then
Yeah.
people like me are starting to have kids, and they're like, "Yo, let me show you what I'm into." Now those kids are into it, and that's why you have like this whole generation, and you have a second and third generation now emerging because when you have LeBron James liking an anime, it's like I want to be like LeBron James, or I want to be like Steph Curry, and so I think that's what's happened with the anime world. Is
Yeah.
it's now cool to be an anime fan, and then if your parents are into it, and then a big NBA player's into it or football players into it, it just gets super cool in that regard.
Yeah, well, what's cool is when they start making movies about it, like Ghost in the Shell, which I was in. Now they've got a new one that came out, which I think I got replaced in. I'm not sure. By Melissa Fawn. And
So
but
let's talk about that Ghost in the Shell thing because I think it's a Takakoma is how it is. I'm sure I got it wrong, but I know that you were.
Tachikoma.
Yes. I've already given up on pronouncing it correctly. Yeah, I understand how to take an L very well, and I think you were Batu's one.
Yeah,
at that.
I was Batu's Tachikoma, like his personal Tachikoma. But I haven't seen this new thing. But anyway, they didn't ask me to be the Tachikoma, so I don't know what happened there. But that happens.
So what is that like? Because each one of them has a personality. I mean, they're essentially tanks. Is what they are, and they're fun tanks, and they're like spider-like tanks. But
Mm-hmm.
what is that like? Because Ghost in Shell is very much a legendary series. It has a
Yeah.
rich history, and it's very cool. And obviously, you had a specific, role with this. And what was that like? Because they're fun, and they all have their own personality too.
Right. Well, they're the Tachikomas were all the cute voices. They got me and Sandy Fox and Sherry Lynn and I don't know if Melissa did it or not. I'm not sure. I knew it was the three of us, but that was with a different group, which I really enjoyed working with because that group was Kevin Seymour was the director who also passed away too young, but he was really into making it really good stuff. Like he was probably the first one that started getting more into sticking with the Japanese aesthetic of the whole thing. And so it was great working with him. But that was it was a fun show to work on. And we did a lot of great stuff there. We did Cowboy Bebop and what's the other one that there's a bunch of them that we did. I did a one that I loved called Metropolis, which was a beautifully illustrated feature film.
It was very well done.
Yeah.
It did not do well in the box office, unfortunately.
I know. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was really well done, and it was fun to work on. We worked on it at Sony, like on the
Supposedly,
studio.
it was very important for anime films and what they were doing with it. But I'm a huge Tezuka fan, and I know a lot about the guy, and it's like
Mhm.
my favorite thing to talk about. It's like in my top 10 things that I love talking about. And one of the things is that it definitely advanced movies forward, and
Mhm.
I mean it still stands up today, but it just for whatever reason it just didn't convert back in
It
like 2000s.
Yeah, it probably wasn't there at the right time because when they did things like Spirited Away, that was after that. That was quite a while after that. So they probably wasn't quite ready for prime time at that time. But it was just such a great show to work on. I mean, I really felt proud of working on that show.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. And for everybody who's watching and listening to this later on, obviously, if you haven't seen it yet, it's not a hard movie to track down, and it is well worth the watch because
Yeah.
will blow your mind. And things that were done in that movie have not actually been done in a lot of other things. That's what makes it so interesting. But
Yeah.
very intense movie too. Very intense.
Yeah. Maybe they need a bring it out again or something.
I
Except
would
then
love to.
they'd probably add some like celebrities or something to it because yeah, that was the thing that there was a bunch of celebrities that were really into all this stuff. Like I know Toby Hooper at one point wanted to make a Robotech movie, and now they're always talking about doing a Robotech movie. In fact, even like recently, but nothing has happened with that. But they've done, some other. What was the other one that they did? Cowboy Beat. No, it was something else that came out that I worked on that came out as a film.
Cowboy Bebop dropped on Netflix, the live action.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Cowboy Bebop.
And that was entertaining, and then Netflix canceled it, which was disappointing.
Yeah.
Very.
I don't know. I started watching it, but I couldn't get past the first episode somehow. I just, the thing with me is like when we started, we didn't really know anything about anime, so it wasn't like we were anime fans so much. In fact, we didn't really know what it was. So it's like, we're kind of coming from a different mindset of the people that are doing anime today. I mean, like when you go to conventions and stuff, all these really young people, even like from Texas, that are working non-union and everything, they've got these big lines of people that are, to sell their autographs and all that stuff. And, it's just a whole different world. Although those are fun.
It's become very commercial, very, very quickly. And it's very different. I mean, I'm 29, and so I remember starting to go to anime cons when I was 14. And in the last 15 years, it has evolved very differently. And both on, a sponsorship level, on an autograph level, also there is a change. And I'm having the problem where I am an anime fan, but I've evolved outside of the running around crazy anime fan.
Yeah.
And so I'm also more in the historian side of anime. I'm also more in the intellectual side, and so it's like I'm a weird breed because I like anime cons, but I don't fit in. And also, what's happened in the anime world is that it used to be that you needed to know certain shows in the anime world to have your card. So you need to know Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, Full Metal Alchemist, Code Geass is a big one. You needed to know, Gundam 00. Now you don't need to know any of that. So there are people that I speak to at an anime con, and they know nothing of anything that like I grew up when I was 12, and so it's become a very weird world.
Yeah, I get people saying, "Oh, my grandfather turned me on to Robotech." I'm like, "Oh, great! Oh man, that makes me feel really old."
and then obviously going back into another role here is that I thoroughly enjoy because I just think the show is funny. Is a Destiny of the Shrine as
yeah,
and I just love that character. I just love her because it's a fun show and like it's the type of show that I could just watch. I don't have to think about it if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember that. I played
She's basically like
was that the Seiseki or no? That was Bado.
Her entire thing is that like I guess it's these like guardians, and basically she's a type of character that was used and was sort of pushed out and did some things that weren't great and sort of abused, and then she's not chosen. She becomes a snake. And like she's like that and she's a very fun and dark character.
Yeah.
And I just like her. And then another character that I think is one of your most impactful roles was in Lucky Star as Katna Izumi. I don't know if I lost. I don't know if I lost you. Oh my god! Like
no. Can you hear me?
yes. I'm like you just broke for like 30 seconds. Like oh my god! Like what did I do wrong?
I think I was standing there going, oh, okay, which character was that? Like, I can't remember a lot of them. Like, I have to have fans remind me, like, who it was or what I played. I know it's, like, really dear to a lot of people, and I go, like, oh my God, I can't remember that character or what they did.
I mean, your role in Lucky Star was so interesting, and I think Kanta Izumi was only in, like, 1 or 2 episodes.
Oh, okay.
And so like she's the mother of like the main character, and she's only there for like 1 or 2 episodes, but it's just so impactful.
I played a mother. It's funny because like I'm like 68. Anyway, I have never played a mother. Like, really, I think I played one I did play one in Tenchi Muyo, but she was like this crazy karaoke lady or something. But for the most part, I never get cast as a mother because my voice sounds too young. Like, there's 20-year-olds that can do my, mother better than me.
This role is that obviously she's like a spirit, and she sounds exactly like her daughter.
Oh,
And
okay.
but it's just such an impactful role in a lot of
Oh, neat.
ways. And then hopefully we can talk about Rose and Maiden, because
Yeah.
that's another one that's just kind of crazy, and that's been a role that's just been giving you, over and over, because it's like got 3 seasons. I don't know if they wrapped it up after the third season, and it's also madly confusing, that show, because they start normal, then they go like 15 years in the future in like the second season, and then in the third season they go back like 9 years. It's the
Yeah.
weirdest show ever. But I think you play like Saiseki,
Oh,
or I'm
yeah.
gonna get,
Okay. Yeah. Suisei. Yeah. She's a
yes.
really crazy character.
She's
that
also
one
very
was,
different than your other roles,
yeah.
where she is more shy. She is also tends to be more reserved, and it's so different because it's not that cute little girl voice.
Yeah.
But like, and I don't mean to sound like mean about it, but like, she is a mature character in a lot of ways, and I was a little surprised that you voiced her. To be very honest.
There was a couple of shows where I did like one part. I did the two of us did the same character, but when she went into like a deeper voice and somebody else played her part. I'm not sure if that was When They Cry. I think that was When They Cry. I did that, but I'm trying to remember if I did that with Suisei Seki, because I kind of remember her yelling and stuff a lot, like kind of like screaming a lot.
I think she started to towards the end, but
Yeah.
like the first part of, I think, either season one or season two, massively reserved,
Oh, okay.
massively like tentative, and it's just like little surprised, honestly. Like when I was doing my research and all that stuff, I was like, oh wow, did not it didn't even occur to me. Like, I did not make the connection. You know how like you hear somebody's voice and you're like, oh, I know whose voice that is. Like,
Yeah.
it did not occur to me. It
Wow.
was like I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing where we go in by ourselves, we just do our parts, and then we never see the show afterwards because we don't get a copy of it most of the time. I think there's only been like once or twice I've gotten a copy of something that I did afterwards. And with Code Geass, when I did the movie, we had a premiere, like in Hollywood. So we did get to see the whole
Oh, well, we're
show.
gonna talk about Code Geass. I love Code
Yeah.
Geass.
But for the most part, I never knew what my characters did or who they were talking to or anything like that, because other than, just the little lines that I did, and if I happened to hear the other character and they were doing it in English, then I kind of knew what was going on. But yeah, half the time we're in the dark completely. Unless, you were the writer on the show, you didn't really know, or the director.
And obviously, you're going to have to go Geass, but I think I don't need to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. A voice director, a good one, is beyond helpful,
Uh-huh.
because they do make a show, because they should know a good chunk of the show. Obviously, and I'm going to use an example like One Piece. There's no way in hell a voice director can know where One Piece is going, but they should
Mm-hmm.
know where the next 30 episodes are going, to
Yeah.
some degree. And or they should know at least where the season's going. If the season's 24 episodes, they should have an idea where the season's going. And the reason why I use One Piece is One Piece is over 1,000 episodes. So on episode 100, you can't know it's going to be 1,000 episodes.
Yeah.
I think it's a safe assumption, but what is that like? Because obviously a voice director is directing you, and they're like, oh, I need more emotion, or I need less emotion, because something might be happening in episode 7, but you're recording episode 3. You need to set that up. So
Yeah.
hopefully I got that right.
Yeah, we just go with, they may do a few takes to get it the way that they want it, but for the most part, we don't really know the context of what's going on. So, we're just doing, like, we have this whole script of just lines. They're all our lines, just one after the other, and you do them in small pieces because you have to fit the lips. So you can't do like this big, paragraph or anything like that. So, we just kind of go, okay, number 1, number 2, number, 23, number 328 or whatever. And so they skip around into different episodes. So like, I don't even know how many episodes I did most of the time. I just kind of go with, what they say, okay, turn the page here. Or now everything's on the computer. So they just put it on your, in front of your face to read it. Whereas we used to have a paper script, and now, that you could write on and stuff. And now it's like, it's all digital. I think it still is.
And then obviously I want to jump into Code Geass because I
Uh-huh.
love Code Geass. I love Code Geass for a lot of reasons. I
Yeah.
actually think that Nunnally is a really perfect example of a disability character done well. I really think that they don't really acknowledge her disability. It just is there.
Mhm.
It's relevant because it shows that she's vulnerable and that she has some form of innocence. And obviously she's blind. And she's this like pure innocence in the entire show. And she's the reason why a lot of ways Lelouch is doing what Lelouch is doing. And so how did this even come about? Because she is such a essential character to Code Geass. And I mean, not going to ruin the ending, but the ending of Code Geass, in particular with her, is so good. And I'm not going to be that guy if you haven't seen it. But what was this like? Because there's a lot of fun episodes with Natalie, but then there's also a lot of meaningful. The Euphema interaction was great. And then also the realization at a certain point with Natalie is just that she knows what's going on. It's epic. It's just epic.
Yeah. Well, that one, it's another example of coming in and doing the lines. So I didn't really know what was happening until I actually saw the movie, because we were invited to the screening. But I like doing it because at that point, that wasn't, well, I'm trying to think of when I first did that, but I was obviously older than I was when I was doing Minmay. And, when I was doing a lot of shows earlier on, there was like a lot of screaming and falling out of planes and, that type of thing, which is not as easy to do when you're older. So Nunnally was great because she was much more subtle, and it was an easier part for me to do. And you could
Did you
really get
also
into the
feel
acting part.
Yeah, did you also feel that? I mean, Code Geass was more publicized.
Uh-huh.
Nothing against Robotech, but the
Well,
internet changed anime in
yeah.
a lot of ways. And I remember her coming into Code Geass on Sci-Fi Anime Mondays or Anime Mondays. So I would stay up. I'm in high school and I'm watching this when I shouldn't have been. Instead of getting a good night of sleep, I'm watching like 3 hours of anime. I'm like, this show's awesome. And it was also the idea, and my friends were doing the same thing, and we'd be like rolling in Tuesday morning. Yo, you see the episode? It was great. But do you feel that also with Code Geass? Because I think everybody was watching Code Geass at that point. That it was also more publicized. It was more out there, and it was different than I feel Robotech, where
Oh,
Robotech
yeah.
had a following, but Code Geass was like a club in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Well, by that time, they were really sticking with the Japanese translation. There was a whole, the technology was much different. There was just so much different at that point. But yeah, it was a cool character. It was like a very dramatic character. I got to, do more than just be cute and goofy.
And then even going further, I mean, obviously there's R1, R2, and then the movie came out as well.
Hmm.
And so what was that like, getting to do the movie and having fun with that and seeing all that stuff
Well,
happen?
that was exciting because we had done, I don't know when we did the first Code Geass, so all these states,
Like
all these shows, like
2006,
yeah,
2007.
it was a long time ago. And then this one came up in 2019, so that was like really the last show I've worked on, an anime show that I've worked on, because then the pandemic hit, and I was going through a bunch of stuff where my boyfriend was really ill, and all kinds of bad stuff was happening. I was moving and all this stuff, but yeah, it was like there was a big gap between the two, so we were recording with a different crew and different director and all that stuff. But what was fun was that they made a big deal out of it, because they really had it. It was like on right off of Hollywood Boulevard at the it's like, what's his name? It's a famous theater. It's a theater that's kind of off on I think it's on Ivar Vine. I can't remember now. Ugh. Anyway, I'm having a senior moment. Sorry, but but yeah, I mean, they just made such a huge deal out of it, and it was exciting because it really, we had like a red carpet and publicity and all this stuff, which really showed the difference in the way that people think of anime now. Kind of went into that, and then it went into all the celebrity stuff. So now it's like it's hard to get a leading role because some celebrity wants to be in an anime.
It's such a different world. It's such a different world now.
Yeah, though, when I was working a long time ago, I worked with some people that did become really popular, like Bryan Cranston used to do Power Rangers background voices, and he worked at Intersound, and we all worked together, and then all of a sudden he became this humongous star. So that was exciting.
I mean, there's another one. Fergie used to do voice acting, and back in the day, she used to do it as a kid. It's crazy.
Oh, really? I don't think she worked with us in LA though. She probably worked.
She was doing stuff like with the Peanuts and like all these like other shows, and it's crazy.
Okay.
It's crazy. Like all these people having all these weird things, and I mean, Bryan Cranston was in Macross Plus too, and it's just wild how that has all happened. And even just like, I mean, the whole Saban crew. I mean, Derek, Stephen Prince is a big one. Steve Bloom, I think, was there. Tony Oliver, Rick Hunter, and it's crazy. It's a small world.
Yeah, Alex Borstein, who's plays the funny agent on Mrs. Maisel, worked with us on Power Rangers also. She's won Emmys or been nominated for Emmys and all kinds of stuff.
It's crazy because all these people have started it, and obviously even to get that press. And I also think it's Code Geass, where Code Geass, I feel, sort of changed the game a little bit with anime.
Oh,
because
that's interesting.
Where it was coming out right at the right time. It was also very publicized, like on Anime Mondays, where they play like an episode every single week. And then what was fascinating is that it became an event on Monday night at like 11 o'clock. And so now it's like channel 48 on cable, and it's like, you're there or you're not. It was one of those, and it was really, really something that I felt was very, very cool in that regard.
Yeah, that is cool. See, I didn't know any of that because I was, just this old lady doing anime, so I didn't really know what was going on afterwards.
So I am curious because since Code Geass was way more publicized, what was it like? I don't know if you were doing cons, but what was that like? Because obviously, I mean, Nunnally is a very central character. I mean, everybody knows who Nunnally Lamperouge is, or Nunnally v Britannia. I don't know if it's v La Britannia or v Britannia, but I think everybody gets where I'm going. But what was that like if you were doing conventions as well? Because at that point, obviously things changed at cons as well.
Yeah. Well, I like doing cons myself, although I'm not on the con circuit yet. I was approached by one of the con agents, which I would love to just do that, even if I don't do that many actual shows so much anymore, because it's just the whole thing's changed a lot. But it is really fun. But like we were talking about before, when I first started doing conventions, they would pay us to go do the convention, and then we would just sign everybody's autographs, and they just would sign whatever they brought us, but now it's like the selling your autograph is like it's a whole way of monetizing your career now, which you have to do because voice acting is very unpredictable, and you're not working like a full-time, like a 9 to 5 kind of job. So any way that you can monetize it is great, and that's just become a big way to monetize it. It's huge, actually. In fact, I was talking to one of my friends who does a lot of stuff, and he's been doing it as long as I have, and he said he makes more money doing conventions than he does doing the actual shows, and he directs and writes and does all of that stuff. So it's kind of crazy, but
It's become a different world, and I mean, I have a very unique skill in a particular area, and I'm figuring out how to monetize it because it's not just voice acting anymore. It's we are living in that you have to figure out how to monetize every little bit. I mean, you know, again, I mean, this show is a perfect example where sometimes I have, sponsors on my show, and this is how I paid for my show, and I paid for all my things. And I'm learning that sponsors come and go, but whenever I get a big sponsor, I milk it as much as I can because there'll be points where it disappears. And I think it's very, very different in this world. And I mean, it's both good and bad in a lot of
yeah.
ways.
Well,
And
I learned all that being a blogger because I've been blogging since like 2008, and so I have two blogs that have nothing to do with voice acting. It's like a whole different thing. But I learned all that stuff, like affiliate marketing and sponsors, and doing social media. Even though I'm like in this age group, there's actually a lot of women over 50 doing that. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, there's online, like the creator space is one of the biggest ways that people are making big bucks. So if you can latch on and go viral on something, which I haven't quite done yet, but after all this time, I'm not like viral or anything, but I do pretty well on my blog.
yeah, no. I was doing pretty okay on my sponsorships, and I'm lazy though.
Yeah,
It serves a different purpose completely. I have another business that benefits tremendously from what I pick up here.
that's
And
great.
people know it. I buy and sell comics on eBay, and because I interview so many people, I actually can spot trends before people, and
Yeah.
so it's very useful when you're speaking to a lot of people in the comic world and all that stuff, and even just understanding. And it served me well to just talk to people as well as make me not go crazy in the middle of COVID. That's another thing too.
Oh, I hear you. The other day I was selling a couple of things on eBay that somebody had given me. It was like this it was the complete collection of Robotech songs, and it's this, really, it's kind of old. I mean, but it's this big DVD collection. And I looked on Amazon and I thought, oh, this thing's selling for like $280, or so
Is it a nice big blue box?
yeah, they're really big ones. So I sold one of them for like 185, and maybe I could have gotten more, but I was thinking like, man, that's
A nice
cool.
big blue box
Send
that
me
has
some more of those.
it's got Macross, it's got Southern Cross, and then it's got New Gen in it, and then it's
Yeah.
got like the extras. I have one of those. I have one of those.
Well, it's worth a lot of money, just so you know. And this guy
I
didn't
know
even
exactly.
they didn't even want me to autograph it. So it was just straight without an autograph. It was worth a lot.
It's something that eventually I'm going to probably buy mine in Blu-ray because I do want a copy of Robotech in Blu-ray, but I'm going to do it in pieces,
Hmm.
because I know that's just eventually when I'm not poor and broke.
Right.
It's a problem. But it's so interesting, and I think people have to realize that we live in a pay-to-play world now,
Yep.
very much. And I ran a Kickstarter actually for my show too, and I got a lot of heat for it. And one of the things that I was trying to explain to people is that look, it's pay to play at this point, where you got to bring something to the table.
Hmm.
It's whether you're bringing media, you're bringing attention, you're bringing introductions, or something of that nature. At this point, you can't just go somewhere and expect results. There has to be something brought to it.
Right.
and it's a very fascinating world we live in, and I think that's the way cons are going, and
Yeah.
so I think it's very, very interesting. And again, though, I also think that if people knew how much voice actors are being paid, they might say, "Oh, I get it too." And I think that's also the misconception
Well,
is that a lot of
especially anime voice actors.
I
That's
mean,
like
I would even
it's on the low end of the total pole.
and especially with certain companies and
Mhm.
certain cheaper per things, they do some shady things. If you're around long enough in the industry, and I've had friends. I mean, I've been interviewing voice actors for over 10 years. I know every shady play that happens,
Yeah.
and so I'm well aware of how you guys get screwed. For lack of a better
Well,
word.
I guess I kind of made the decision because I've been in the Screen Actors Guild for a really long time, and if I would really, I only want to work in a union show right now. I mean, at this point, so because you have to. What a lot of people don't think about is when you get older, like me. What happens is if you're working all this 1099 stuff, you're not putting away for Social Security and stuff. You're supposed to, but most people would rather buy groceries than do that. So, or buy gas for their car or whatever. So, they don't put it away. And then when they get older, they're going like, oh, I have no Social Security. I don't have, a pension or anything like that. So, it's sad that's happening, but it just is. It's just the nature of the beast, especially with online and everything. It's just
It's very
different.
complicated, and unfortunately, not to go into it. I mean, my name is Andrew, the investor here for a reason. My business and what I do on eBay is a whole different discussion. That is
Yeah.
actually June 16th, everybody. I'm going to be talking about parts of this on this very channel. I'm giving everybody a heads up. But yeah, people, unfortunately, and this is not a knock on people, people are not in this country are not financially educated, and
Hmm.
they are not good at, people are good at saving. That's not the
Yeah.
issue. People are bad at investing, and it's not
Hmm.
that they're bad at investing. They don't understand how to do it, and they don't
Right.
have the discipline to do it. And it's a real problem because we don't teach that in schools.
Well, because
And
teachers don't teach it because they don't make enough to do it either. So, or they don't. They're not in that mindset of doing it. So they don't. They're not able to teach it.
it's
Unfortunately.
it's that, and it's also the idea that they don't want to take responsibility for crossing the line of financial responsibility and screwing up
Yeah.
somebody's life, which I completely understand too, because
Yeah.
I don't advise people economically. I teach skills, but I'm not here's the stock you pick for a reason because I don't want to be responsible for anybody's finances beyond my
Yeah.
own and my own family's, which I don't take on people's other responsibility, and I don't think, I'm not here to force anybody to do that either.
Yeah, I think
But
that's great that you're doing it at your age too, because a lot of times people in their 20s just they don't even think about it. You don't think about it until it's too late most of the time.
yeah, yeah, no, 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 no. I figured it out. I've been doing it for a while, and I invest in, and I'm very disciplined, and I make a lot of sacrifices.
That's
But
great.
the idea, and this is why I want to teach it. And I teach
Yeah.
skill sets, and October 5th, guys, is a class is dropping in a particular subsection of this area. I believe in financial education cold heartedly, and I believe it is the greatest education that anybody can get.
Yeah.
And people can disagree with me. That's fine. You're just wrong. That's all it is. No, no, no. I really do believe that if we have a problem, and I believe that is one of the biggest problems in America right now
Oh
is
yeah.
financial.
I agree completely. I wish I'd
And
learned.
you know what is it's unfortunate, and I hope at some point we'll fix that problem. But again, I don't know how to exactly convey it, but some areas in this country are starting to try to, and
Yeah.
they have solutions, or at least they are attempting. But that's neither here nor there for anime. um and it's a far cry from that. But again, guys, you can watch me June 16th. I think we're shooting at 7 o'clock. It's going to be a fascinating thing, and it's free to watch, guys.
Cool.
And I promise it won't beat anybody up. It's not a yelling event. It's not a making you feel bad event, and you might listen to me, you might say, hey, this is not for me. And it might be the greatest 45 minutes because knowing not what to do or knowing what's not for you or a strategy that's not for you is just as valuable as knowing what is for you.
Yeah.
It might be the best 45 minutes to an hour worth of your time. So you might be like, man, I kind of like this, or this is not for me. I want to pursue something else in this sector, which is perfectly fine as well. But enough
Yeah.
about me pontificating my positions and my crusade to make everybody financially educated. Hey, hey, 2040 guys, that's the platform for me to run. But I do want to talk about one more role, and I'm going to get
Okay.
the name wrong. And it's Danganronpa, I want to say, or
Oh, Danganronpa.
yes.
Danganronpa.
And the reason why I want to talk about this one is A, it's trippy. I don't even know. I think you're like Manumi/Usami, or I
Mona,
probably got those names wrong
I
too.
think it's Monami.
Yeah,
I think.
Monami. It's like a half pink white bear rabbit creature. Looks like a pig.
I played all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah, I was a cockroach once. So
So I don't know exactly what this is, but this is not an anime, it's a video game. And that's what's
right.
interesting about this because I know video game voice acting is different than anime voice acting.
Yeah.
Um, so what is the major difference for those who don't know?
Well, it's not so much that you're talking to another character. You're just like you've got a whole list of lines that you're doing, and I guess they pop up whenever somebody hits it in the video game. So it's not like you're really reacting to somebody. So you just get this list of lines, and then you also get a list of usually efforts or screams or karate chops or something like that, depending on what kind of game it is. They can be really hard on your voice. This one wasn't because it was, just a kind of cuter character, but some of them are really, really hard on people's voices. They're just a lot of yelling and screaming and stuff. But yeah, that's just the thing is you really don't like. I didn't know what was going on in this game at all because I just had a set of lines to read and they didn't really make sense together. So I'm sort of in the dark when it comes to that because I really haven't ever played a video game. Everybody goes, "What's your favorite video game?" Or "What's your favorite game?" And I'll go, "Monopoly." I don't know.
Because I know that there's obviously a crossover with anime video games. Where if you have a big title, a lot of times there's a bunch of games that come out of it. Also, there is things that then are a game that then become an anime, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's very interesting. And I also know that fighting games, sometimes a character's voice gets lower, and it almost needs to be re-recorded to some degree. They're more panting if they're on like 1% health. And
Yeah.
so it's very interesting, I think, that because it's also very different. And also, it's kind of like a strong punch, a medium punch, a weak punch can be recorded as well. And so it's just a whole different realm, I think, of voice acting
Mm-hmm.
because there's a bunch of different things you need to do. And it's
Right.
also sometimes I also just speaking to people, they might record the voices first and then do sort of the game animations later. And so it might not even be dubbing sometimes. It might be that, hey, we're going to build it around your voice. Because I know that happens too.
Yeah.
So,
Probably. Yeah. I don't really know how it comes together after I do the voice. So I know there's no characters really to watch, It's just you're just doing it.
every game I think is different, but I know a lot of times they're like, okay, cool, let's just do the voices first, and then because it's almost easier
Mhm.
sometimes doing it that way. I know that a bunch of shows do that as well. I think like F is for Family did that on
Mhm.
Netflix where they did the voices first, and
Well,
then
that's
they.
because that's an original animation, which is different than doing like a Japanese animation, which is already produced.
Mhm.
So yeah, they do the voice first for that, and then they draw it. So it may take a while for that to come out because that goes through a whole production process.
so there's a lot of fun stuff that happens. And again, I'm not a voice actor or actress for that matter. So I just want to make that crystal clear. I've never done anything of this. I am just an anime fan. And so I am not the expert. So do not solicit me for advice on this topic. Um, but I do want to back out of these roles. Obviously, I missed a bunch of your roles, and I know that I have because you have so many, and these are just some of my favorite and some of the
Yeah.
ones that I think people know. But I do have one more question before I give you a chance to self promote. How
Okay.
do you feel that the anime industry has changed in the last 30 years or so? Because you've been part of it, for a while at this point. And how do you feel that it has evolved? And where do you even think it's going at this point? Because, I mean, my view is that it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, I'm sure it has because the technology is so much better. But like I said, it's gone from like when I was doing Robotech or some of those even before that, where we didn't have we didn't have the beeps and that whole thing. And we didn't even have it wasn't even digital. It was all on these 3/4 inch tapes that had to be changed all the time. So it just changes. The easier the technology makes it, the easier it's going to be to make it look better. And then of course, like the animation itself is going to look better because they've got all this, everything's just whatever it is, digital CGI, all that stuff. So, and then for me with the voices, it just people have become such big fans of it that everybody wants to be a voice actor. Some people shouldn't become a voice actor. I have to say this to people because people ask me all the time, like, how do I become a voice actor? I really want to be in an anime and all that. And I'm going like, voice acting is about being an actor. It's like you're supposed to study acting first. But I can understand why people want to do it because they're fans of it. So it's just made it hugely competitive. And when with all these different places doing it and people doing it for very little money, it makes it I don't know, it's just changed the whole industry. There's all this now, everything's like online where you have to pay to audition, which is not something you would ever do. Ever.
It's very interesting because one of the things is that I obviously come from the comic world. I come from wrestling as well, cosplay,
Hmm.
and I mean I've been saying it to people all the time with comics. I say, look, if you want to make money, don't write a comic book. It's the idea that making money in comics is very hard, and I think that that's something that people really have to ask themselves. The question is that what type of life do I want? And am I in this because I love doing it? And I want to do this regardless of the economic outcome. And I would like to make a living doing it. But I think these questions have to be asked.
Well,
And this is one of the things with comics why I haven't written a comic is that, look, I run an eBay business buying and selling comic books, and I make decent money as a side hustle doing that.
yeah.
I and I'm enjoying it and I'm able to buy fun toys with that money and invest it and do other things with that money. If I'm to write a comic book, I may be able to do the same rate of return, but also I don't know it's going to be hard. And so I've asked myself the question, what type of life do I want to live? And also what headaches and what headaches don't I want to have?
Yeah.
And if you love this and you want to voice act, I'm not going to not say no, but you have to understand what you're getting into and you have to really ask yourself those questions.
Yeah, it's become really expensive too because, with having to have your own home studio, you got to have all the equipment. They've got these pay to play audition sites. There's just, a lot that goes into it too that you have to add up as far as expenses and things. I mean, it used to be you were as an actor, you were trying to do other types of acting jobs, or maybe you were doing other things as well, but you didn't have, well, I guess everything, any kind of marketing is always going to have an outlay, no matter even a long time ago. I mean, you had to run off headshots or demo reels, and all that stuff. Whereas actually now, in some ways, it's easier because you can email everything. which is, but there's expenses involved. There's training involved, I guess. I never took a class to be an anime actor, but I took a lot of theater classes and acting classes. So, that's kind of the difference. You have to really want to be an actor, I think. But if you don't want to, you could start a YouTube channel. It's really easy to do. I just started 2 of them and trying to grow those. And, there's so much you can do on your own. You could start a podcast. I had a podcast too. Talk about whatever it is that you like and see if you like doing stuff like that, because it's very technical and you have to like doing it, editing it, all that
And
stuff.
I'm going to throw something else out there for people. You know what is, if you're creative, is maybe you want to create your own. And maybe you want to create it and build it from scratch, because it might be just as difficult or easy in that regard. And you'd be surprised where, I'm not saying necessarily it's cheap, but there's a million ways how to do it. If you have a script, you have a little bit of money, you have a little bit of animation, or you have a bunch of people who are into it, all of a sudden, you might be able to raise money on Kickstarter and you're voice acting in your own production. And guess what? You don't have to audition because you're the person who created it.
Yeah, well, the other thing is you don't have to go through the rejection, because these people that are doing these pay-to-play sites, they're doing like hundreds of auditions and maybe getting one out of all that time that they spend doing these little auditions for, with all this competition. It's really, you got to have a really strong emotional core to be able to take that. If you've got like emotional issues and stuff like that, I don't recommend it. I recommend just doing your own thing and just having fun with it.
I agree. And also, I go back to what I said before. You got to ask yourself, a series of hard questions. And it's, what's your financials? What type of life do you want to live? Where are you at in life? I mean, I'm going to be very honest. If you got a newborn baby coming, you got to sort of, realize saying, hey, maybe this is not the path at the moment for me. But if you're 16, maybe you just want to throw your stuff out there and see what happens, But again, I'm not going to tell anybody no. I'm just going to say, hey, ask yourself a series of hard questions. That's all I'm going to say on that point. But I am going to give you a chance to self-promote, because we've been speaking for almost an hour, 20 minutes. Obviously, I know you got a website. I think I included your website in the description up above. What are your social medias? Where can people find you? Where can people check out? Do you use Streamily or that site?
I just got a Streamily page. I just got one. So it's Rebecca Forstadt, streamily.com/Rebecca Forstadt. And then my website is RebeccaForstadt.com. That's FORSTADT. It's kind of a German thing. And then I'm mainly on Twitter for my voice acting, because I do other things, like I'm blogging and everything. I don't really promote my voiceover stuff so much on Instagram, but definitely on Twitter, on voiceover Twitter, they call it, where you put hashtag voiceover, just following everybody, seeing what they're talking about and everything. And I think that's it.
And I'm gonna just keep saying it. You have to support indie content creators. Voice actors and actresses are indie, and while they're starring in some big shows, they are independent. People working, and the best way how to support them is watch their shows, tweet about their shows, bother them on Instagram, Facebook, like their pages, support them on social media, and if they're at a con, go buy a print. Go bring a Pop Funko if they have a character. Obviously, if they're charging for an autograph, pay for said autograph. It goes a long way. Also, is interacting with somebody. If somebody puts up a tweet saying, Code Geass, I was just not only in Code Geass, say, oh man, I saw that movie, great movie. It goes a long way. It really does, and it also affects the algorithm. Also, if people have projects, whether they're kickstarting it or it's indie, crowdfunded, things of that nature, that goes a long way in supporting it. And also just shooting somebody a message on their website sometimes, say, hey, I really enjoyed doing this thing, because that also goes a long way. I know that when people say, man, great interview with so-and-so, it means a lot to me.
Oh
So that
yeah.
I recommend that people do. But more importantly, just if people have merchandise, actually buy it because it does go a long way and it does help out tremendously.
I do
Um,
want to say one thing. If you have a convention that you would like to invite me to, I am like open to go because I love to travel. I'm like a travel junkie. So if I can go someplace exciting or even someplace that's just someplace I've never been before, I don't care if it's like, some small town and wherever. I love to check it out.
that's another thing too. So if you're running a convention, obviously, reach out to voice actors because they're fun and they're a blast. And what I was gonna say is I'm gonna quickly promote myself. Obviously, my social media is down below. Follow me on Twitter, Pop Anime Comics. Follow me on Instagram, Pop Anime Comics. Go bother me on Facebook, Pop Anime Comics. I have a Twitch account, but I don't really use it. It's Pop Anime Comics. If you Google conversations in pop culture, it will pop up too. YouTube as well as Pop Anime Comics. Because I appreciate all subs, I appreciate all follows, all shares, I appreciate retweets. Obviously, if you want to be a guest, you can hit me up there and I will check out what you're doing on that stuff. If you like to support this show, I buy me a coffee. That's always appreciated too. It's not necessary for anybody, but obviously if you like what you see. And I just appreciate everybody. Obviously, I got my Gundam shirt that you can check out as well. That's a great way how to support this. I got a few more shirts coming, but I can't tell anybody about them. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take you out in a very pleasant way, possibly to dinner.
Mhm.
But hey, I can't say anything bad. I don't want to get kicked off any platform yet. I don't have a backup plan. I worked too hard for this. But in all seriousness, I appreciate all support in any fashion, and really, social media goes a long way for me, and so I really appreciate people sharing it out. On that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, okay. I was just excited to be here. I love doing these things, and it's just exciting that anybody is still excited about listening to me. Like, or let's hope they are anyway. Thank you
Well,
so
I
much.
don't think. Please.
No, I just said thank you so much. I really appreciate being asked to be on the show.
No, I am very, very happy that you're on my show because I'm a huge fan of yours. Obviously, Nunnally, Lynn Minmay, Mihoshi, Tenchi Muyo, and a variety of other shows. And I think that is the perfect way how to wrap up this show, everybody. So that is a wrap.